The sound of gravel crunching under tires filled the still air as Caleb switched off the engine of his newly acquired Chevy. The blue paint was faded, yet its character resonated with the rugged landscape around him. He had made the decision quickly, an impulsive buy from a veteran who seemed eager to part with the vehicle. There was something about the man's eyes, a mix of nostalgia and sorrow, that made Caleb uneasy. He brushed it aside, thinking only of the winding dirt roads he'd explore in this old truck. As he stepped out, the late afternoon sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the ground. A soft breeze rustled the leaves of the nearby trees, and the scent of pine mingled with the earthy aroma of the park. Caleb savored these moments. The tranquility of nature was what drew him to this job in the first place. The rhythmic chirping of crickets began to fill the air, marking the day's slow transition into dusk. But there was an itch in the back of his mind, a sense of unfinished business. He glanced back at the Chevy, its trunk inviting him with unspoken secrets. Maybe it was the thought of all those miles yet to be traveled, or perhaps it was the lingering weight of the veteran's gaze that nudged him toward it. With a reluctant sigh, Caleb made his way to the back of the truck, his heart racing ever so slightly. Once at the park shed, Caleb hesitated. He had unloaded gear and checked the tools inside, but the trunk remained closed. A tension hung in the air, thick as the clouds that gathered in the distance. The heaviness of his thoughts weighed on him, an uncomfortable pressure that gnawed at his curiosity. He needed to know what lay inside. With a deep breath, he clicked the latch, and the trunk creaked open, revealing a jumble of items. Among the clutter, an old, rusted toolbox caught his attention. Its surface was marred with scratches and dents, stories etched into its steel exterior. Next to it, a ranger's coat, muddy and worn, hung limply, suggesting a past filled with hard work and memories. But it was the clear plastic folder that drew him in. Caleb pulled it from the trunk, fingers trembling with a strange mix of anticipation and dread. As he opened the folder, the faint scent of musty paper wafted up, mingling with the fresh pine outside. Inside were a series of yellowed reports, each detailing incidents of controlled burns in the forest. Each report bore a familiar signature, his father's. Caleb's heart raced. He flipped through the pages, each one revealing a history he thought he knew, each incident detailing the careful management of the land, the responsibility of protecting the community. But the final report told a different story. It was a confession, a letter never sent addressed to the veteran. The words blurred for a moment as his eyes widened. The weight of the revelation sat heavy on his chest, as if the very air around him had thickened with the unspoken truth. This was more than a discovery. It was a reckoning. Caleb took a moment to steady himself, the folder trembling in his grip. Memories swirled in his mind. His father's voice, rich with pride, recounting tales of bravery and control over the land. He had always seen his father as a hero, a man who could navigate the wilds with ease and whose decisions shaped the very fabric of their small community. But now, that image was being eroded by the weight of this new information. He took a deep breath, trying to clear his mind as he stepped away from the truck. The sounds of nature surrounded him, the gentle rustling of leaves, the distant croaking of frogs, and the faint hum of insects preparing for the night. Yet, in that moment, all felt muted, drowned out by the chaos inside his head. Caleb leaned against the truck, trying to gather his thoughts. Caleb had moved to this small park in rural Oklahoma just 6 months prior. The job was meant to be a fresh start, a break from the relentless pace of city life. He remembered the excitement he felt as he parked at the edge of the forest for the first time, the sprawling trees towering above him like sentinels. The park, with its winding trails and serene lakes, felt like a hidden gem, a place where he could reconnect with nature and leave behind the burdens of his past. It was a stark contrast to the bustling city where he had lived before, where the noise of traffic and the rush of people never seemed to end. Here the air was cleaner, the sky clearer. Mornings began with the soft chorus of birds singing as the sun crested the horizon. He enjoyed the simplicity of his new life, waking up early, brewing coffee in the small cabin he rented, and heading out to greet the day with a sense of purpose. Caleb was a park ranger, a role he had always dreamed of. He loved tending to the trails, ensuring they were clear and safe for hikers. There was something profoundly satisfying about knowing he was helping people connect with the natural world. It was the kind of work that made him feel grounded and fulfilled. But now, as he stood there, the weight of his father's past loomed large, threatening to overshadow his own path. As he stood by the trunk of his Chevy, the folder in hand, he thought of the community he was now part of. The people here were friendly, welcoming, and had a strong sense of history. They often gathered at the diner in town, sharing stories over coffee and pie, and it was common to see familiar faces at the local church on Sundays. Caleb had experienced the warmth of this community firsthand, and he appreciated the simplicity of their lives. But the more he learned about the past, the more complicated things became. He had overheard bits and pieces of conversations about a devastating fire years ago, one that had left marks on the community that had yet to heal. Whispers of blame had circulated, stories of negligence and mistakes that had cost lives and livelihoods. Caleb had always dismissed them as rumors, tales that lost their potency over time. Now, however, he was sitting on the precipice of a much larger truth that could tear apart the very fabric of what he had come to love. The memories of his father's stories filled his mind, of controlled burns that were needed to maintain the ecosystem, how they were crucial for the health of the forest. He could still hear his father's voice, filled with authority and pride, explaining the science behind it all. But now, those familiar tales felt tainted by the revelations he had just uncovered. He tried to shake off the feeling, pushing himself away from the truck and heading toward the ranger station. The evening was creeping in, and the soft glow of the station lights flickered against the darkening sky. Inside, the scent of old wood mixed with the faint smell of fresh coffee brewing. He poured himself a cup, letting the warmth seep into his hands as he took a seat at the small table, trying to ground himself in the present. As he sipped from the mug, his thoughts drifted back to the folder. What would he do with the knowledge he had just uncovered? The reports detailed a series of controlled burns his father had overseen, each one meant to manage the forest and prevent larger wildfires. But the final report, the confession, revealed a mistake that had spiraled out of control, resulting in devastation for a nearby community. Caleb's mind raced. Should he confront his father's legacy? The man had passed away years ago, but the weight of the revelation felt as though it was pressing down on him now. Should he share this with anyone, or was it a burden that should remain buried? The decision felt monumental, a fork in the road that could alter his understanding of his own history. The flickering light of the old radio caught his eye, and he turned it on, letting the soft crackle of static fill the room. A local station played country music, the familiar songs wrapping around him like a warm embrace. It was a comforting presence, but the melody felt distant. He listened absently as the DJ shared tidbits of local news, each story grounding him in the reality of the world outside his own tumultuous thoughts. His phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a text from Jenna, a fellow ranger who had become a close friend. "Hey, are you coming to the cookout at Tom's tonight?" She had invited him several times before, but he had always made excuses, preferring the solitude of his cabin to the social atmosphere of gatherings. Caleb hesitated, thinking about the warmth of community, of laughter and shared stories. But tonight felt different. The weight of the papers in his pocket felt heavy, and he wondered if he could bear to share his thoughts with anyone. "Not tonight," he replied, his fingers hovering over the screen. "Just need some time." He set the phone down, the decision to stay alone reaffirmed. He needed to think, to process the enormity of what he had discovered. Perhaps isolation was what he needed to truly wrestle with the emotions swirling in his mind. As the evening deepened, he felt the chill of the night creeping in. He stepped outside the station, taking in the vast expanse of stars above. The Oklahoma sky was a canvas, painted with shimmering lights, vast and timeless. In moments like this, surrounded by the quiet of nature, he could almost forget his troubles. But tonight, the beauty felt tainted. He could still hear the echoes of his father's stories, woven into the fabric of his childhood. They were tales of heroism and bravery, of a man who dedicated his life to protecting the land. Now he felt as if he stood upon the precipice of a truth that could shatter everything he thought he knew. Caleb returned to the Chevy, driven by an urge he couldn't quite articulate. He needed to confront the past, to unravel the threads of legacy that had been left for him. He opened the trunk once more, the creaking sound echoing in the stillness of the night. With trembling hands, he pulled out the folder again. The yellowed reports seemed to glow under the moonlight, each paper a testament to choices made and lives affected. Closing his eyes, he focused on the familiar signature that adorned the bottom of each document. It was a name that had once filled him with pride, a name he now feared carried a burden he couldn't bear. He needed to know more. The reports offered only fragments of a story, and he was determined to piece it together. The community deserved to know the truth, whatever it may be. He felt an urgent need to understand the fire that had changed so many lives. In his gut, he knew that to honor his father properly, he had to confront the shadows of his past. With newfound determination, Caleb decided to drive into town. The streets were quiet, illuminated by the soft glow of street lamps. He passed familiar buildings, the diner where locals gathered for meals and laughter, the old church with its steeple reaching toward the sky, and the community center where events were held. Each place held a memory, a connection to the people he had come to care about. Arriving at the library, he parked the Chevy and stepped inside. The warm light spilled over the wooden shelves, casting long shadows. The librarian, an older woman named Mrs. Thompson, looked up from her desk with a welcoming smile. "Evening, Caleb? Looking for something specific?" she asked, her voice kind and steady. "Hi, Mrs. Thompson. I'm hoping to dig into some local history," he said, trying to keep his tone casual. "Anything on the big fire that happened years ago?" Her expression shifted slightly, eyes narrowing in thought. "Ah, yes. The fire that devastated the Northwood community. It's a sad chapter in our town's history. We have some records in the archives." Caleb followed her into a small room filled with old newspapers, documents, and photographs, a treasure trove of stories waiting to be unearthed. Mrs. Thompson began pulling out files, her hands moving deftly, as though she had done this many times before. "This was a tough time for many families," she said, laying down a stack of articles. "It was around 20 years ago. A controlled burn went wrong, and it took out a significant portion of the forest, along with homes. The community was devastated, and there was a lot of anger toward the rangers involved." Caleb's heart sank as he read through the headlines. "Wildfire devastates Northwood. Families displaced. Rangers' mistake costs lives." The articles painted a picture of chaos and destruction, of tears and sorrow. It was a reality he had never fully grasped, overshadowed by the heroism of his father's stories. "Do you know who was involved?" Caleb asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Thompson paused, her eyes clouding with memory. Your father was one of them. He was the lead ranger overseeing that burn. It was a terrible mistake, one that haunted him for the rest of his life. Caleb felt the ground shift beneath him. The very foundation of his understanding was crumbling. It wasn't just a story of heroism, it was a tale of tragedy intertwined with his father's legacy. He took a deep breath, the air suddenly feeling too thick to navigate. "That's why I'm looking into it," Caleb admitted, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I want to understand what really happened," Mrs. Thompson nodded knowingly. "Many in the community would want the same. There are still scars left from that fire. People lost everything, and some have never returned. It's important work you're doing, Caleb. Just remember, truths can be heavy." With the articles in hand, Caleb felt a sense of purpose settle over him. He would confront this legacy, not just for himself, but for the community that had suffered. Perhaps this was his path, a way to reconcile the past with the present. The thought sent a shiver down his spine, but beneath the fear lay a flicker of hope. As he left the library, the night air felt different, charged with possibility. He would face the truth head-on, accept the burden of his father's mistakes, and share the stories that deserved to be told. With the folder tucked under his arm and a renewed sense of purpose, Caleb drove back to the ranger station, ready to begin the journey of unearthing the shadows of history. The stars twinkled overhead as he parked the Chevy and stepped into the station. The air was cool against his skin, a comforting reminder that he was grounded in this place, a part of its story. The weight of the past loomed large, but he was not afraid. He was ready to delve into the heart of the legacy before him, determined to find answers that had long been buried. The flicker of the old radio greeted him once more, the DJ's voice filling the silence. It felt like a companion on this journey, a steady presence as he navigated the complexities of his father's legacy. Caleb poured himself another cup of coffee, the aroma filling the small room as he spread out the articles on the table. One by one, he read through the accounts, each one a new layer to the story. The fire, the panic, the community's response, they all painted a vivid picture of the day that had changed everything. As the hours passed, he felt a sense of urgency to piece together the narrative, to understand the ripple effects of that tragic day. In those quiet moments, Caleb knew he was not just uncovering his father's history. He was also connecting with the community that had suffered. Each article was a reminder of the resilience of the human spirit, of the bonds that formed in the aftermath of loss. The shadows of the past were heavy, but they were also a call to action, a chance to confront the truth with compassion and understanding. After hours of research, his eyes grew weary, but a fire had ignited within him. He could no longer stand as a passive observer. He had a duty to honor the past and those who had lived through the devastation. Taking a deep breath, he resolved to seek out the voices of the community, to hear their stories firsthand. The path ahead would not be easy, but Caleb was ready to face it. He would connect with those who had been affected, give them an opportunity to share their truths, and perhaps in doing so, find a way to bridge the gaps left by tragedy. The weight of his father's legacy did not have to be a burden. It could be a catalyst for healing. As he prepared to close the station for the night, Caleb felt a renewed sense of purpose. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of a new chapter, one where he would step into the role of not just a ranger, but a storyteller, a seeker of truth. The turning of the pages had only just begun, and he was determined to uncover the layers of history, no matter how heavy they may be. With the stars guiding him, Caleb stepped outside, ready to embrace the journey ahead. The night was alive with possibility, and he could feel the pulse of the past and present intertwining as he moved forward into the unknown. The Chevy stood as a symbol of his commitment to uncovering the truth, a reminder that the road ahead might be long and winding, but it was one worth traveling. The first rays of dawn broke through the trees as Caleb awoke in the ranger station, the flickering light of the radio casting a warm glow across the room. The rich scent of coffee filled the air, laced with the crisp morning breeze that drifted through the slightly open window. He glanced at the clock on the wall. It was time to start his day. Today would be different. Today, he would confront the echoes of the past and seek out the truth that lay buried beneath layers of regret and silence. With a renewed sense of purpose, Caleb brewed a fresh pot of coffee and prepared a quick breakfast of toast and eggs. As he ate, he reflected on the articles he had perused the night before, their words lingering in his mind like ghosts demanding acknowledgement. They told stories of lives shattered by the fire, families torn apart by loss, and a community struggling to rebuild amid the ashes of their homes. Caleb needed to find those families, to hear their stories, and to understand the full impact of what had happened. He knew it would be difficult, but he felt that in doing so, he could honor not just the victims, but also the legacy of his father, a legacy that needed reconciliation with the truth. After breakfast, he grabbed the folder filled with reports, tucked it under his arm, and headed out to his Chevy. The sun was now fully risen, casting golden light over the landscape. It was a beautiful day, yet the serenity of nature felt at odds with the turmoil brewing inside him. The drive into town was short, but with each mile, Caleb felt the weight of anticipation and anxiety building. Upon arriving at the diner, he noticed a few familiar faces seated at the booths, sharing coffee and conversation. The smell of pancakes and bacon wafted through the air, and he could hear the gentle clatter of dishes being served. It was a comforting atmosphere, but Caleb felt out of place, a stranger stepping into a world that had been profoundly affected by tragedy. He took a deep breath and pushed through the door, the bell overhead jingling softly. The chatter quieted momentarily as patrons turned to look at him. Caleb smiled, trying to project warmth, but inside, he felt like an intruder. He made his way to the counter where Brenda, the waitress with a friendly smile and a sharp wit, greeted him. "Morning, Caleb. The usual?" she asked. "Actually, I think I'll just have coffee for now, Brenda," he replied, his voice steady but his heart racing. "I'm looking to talk to some folks today." "Sure thing. You know where to find the regulars. Just be careful who you ask about that fire. It's still a sore spot for some," she cautioned, her brow furrowing slightly. "Thanks for the heads up," he said, appreciating her concern. As he sipped his coffee, Caleb scanned the room, his eyes landing on a group of older men sitting at a corner booth. They were sharing stories and laughing together, yet Caleb could sense an underlying tension in their camaraderie. He recognized one of them as Bill, a retired fire chief who had been involved during the aftermath of the fire. Caleb knew he would need to approach him eventually, but first he wanted to gather his thoughts. Caleb turned his attention to a table near the window where a woman sat alone, staring into her coffee. She looked to be in her late 40s, her eyes heavy with unspoken burdens. He felt a pull to speak to her, sensing that she might hold a piece of the story he was searching for. Gathering his courage, he approached her table. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" he asked, gesturing to the empty chair. She looked up, her expression a mix of surprise and caution. "No, it's not. Go ahead." "I'm Caleb. I'm the new ranger at the park," he introduced himself, hoping to break the ice. "I've been trying to learn more about the community and the fire that happened years ago. I was wondering if you might share your story." Her name was Margaret, and as she spoke, Caleb learned that she had lost her home to the fire. Her voice trembled slightly as she recounted the day everything changed. "I remember it vividly. I was at work when I got the call," she said, her eyes glazing over with memories. The flames were so high, it looked like the sky was on fire. I rushed home, but by the time I got there it was too late. Everything was gone. Caleb listened intently, his heart aching for her loss. What happened after that? He asked gently, encouraging her to continue. We moved in with my sister for a while, but it wasn't the same. We lost not just our home, but our sense of security. The community came together to help us, but there was always an unspoken blame hanging in the air. People were angry, and it was hard to rebuild when you felt like you were still living in the shadows of that day, she explained. Caleb felt a pang of guilt as he realized the implications of asking these questions. I'm really sorry for what you went through. I've been looking into the incident because I want to understand what happened. It's important to me to honor those affected, he said earnestly. Margaret nodded, her expression softening. It's good that you want to know. The truth needs to be told, even if it's painful. I think your father was involved in the burn that day. Caleb felt a tightening in his chest at the mention of his father. He was, he admitted quietly. I found some reports that suggested he made a mistake, but I want to know more about the impact it had on the community. Margaret sighed, glancing out the window as if searching for something in the past. You want the truth? It was a tragedy that changed everything. People lost their homes, their livelihoods, and some lost their lives. There was a belief that the fire was preventable. Your father was seen as a hero by some, but a villain by others. Caleb could sense the weight of her words. How did the community cope in the aftermath? He pressed, eager to understand the broader picture. We tried to come together. Fundraisers were held, and many people helped us rebuild. But there was always this tension. Some families left town never to return, unable to face the memories. It created rifts that took years to heal, she said, her voice tinged with sorrow. Thank you for sharing that with me, Margaret, Caleb said, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for her willingness to open up. I know it's not easy to talk about, she smiled weakly. Just don't let it be forgotten. The past has a way of haunting us if we don't confront it. Good luck on your journey, Caleb. Indeed, as Caleb left the diner, a heavy cloud of emotions hung over him. He had a small glimpse of the pain that lingered in the community, but he also felt a sense of responsibility to carry their stories forward. He stepped back into the bright Oklahoma sun, determined to seek out more voices, to weave together the narrative of that tragic day. He decided to visit the community center next, where he knew a support group for fire survivors met regularly. As he approached the building, he could hear laughter and chatter spilling out into the parking lot. Caleb took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. Inside, the room was filled with people of various ages, each with their own story to tell. He introduced himself to the group leader, a kind woman named Laura, who welcomed him warmly. Caleb, it's nice to meet you. We've had our share of stories here, and they're not always easy to tell, she said, her eyes filled with understanding. I'm here to listen and learn, he replied, feeling genuine about his intentions. I want to honor the past and help bring awareness to what happened. Laura nodded, gesturing for him to take a seat. We appreciate that. It's important to keep the conversation going. The more we share, the more we heal. Deal. As the group shared their stories, Caleb felt the weight of each experience wash over him. There was a woman who had lost her husband in the fire, a man who had rescued his neighbors, and another who had been left homeless with young children. With every tale, the threads of pain and resilience wove a tapestry of survival against the odds. One man, Jake, spoke with a quiet intensity. I lost everything that day. My business, my home, my family's history. But what hurt the most was the anger and blame that came after. People wanted someone to hold accountable, and it was easier to point fingers than to confront the reality of the fire. Caleb felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "I've heard whispers of blame directed at the Rangers. Do you think it was justified?" he asked, trying to navigate the complex emotions in the room. Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's complicated. We all want to believe that the people in charge have our best interests at heart, but when something goes wrong, it's human nature to look for someone to blame. Your father was part of that, and while he was trying to do his job, the consequences were dire." As the session continued, Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing at a crossroads. He was beginning to see the human cost of his father's legacy, but he also sensed the strength of the community as they shared their pain and forged connections through shared experiences. After the meeting, Caleb approached Laura, feeling a sense of urgency to express his gratitude. "Thank you for allowing me to be part of this today. It's clear that your group is doing important work." She smiled, her warmth palpable. "We're just trying to help each other heal. If you ever want to come back, we'd love to have you." As he left the community center, Caleb felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had gathered more pieces of the puzzle, but it was clear that this journey was far from over. He needed to keep digging, keep listening, and keep uncovering the truth that lay buried beneath years of pain and silence. Caleb returned to the ranger station, his mind racing with thoughts. He knew he needed to confront his father's legacy head-on, and he felt a deep commitment to finding a way to honor both the victims and the rangers who had been involved. He had to determine how he could use this knowledge to create change, to ensure that policies were in place to prevent such tragedies in the future. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue across the sky, Caleb felt the weight of the day settling in. He opened the folder once more, reviewing the reports mixed with the stories he had just heard. The implications of his father's actions were becoming clearer, and he realized that confronting the truth was not just a personal journey, it was a collective one for the entire community. He pulled out a blank sheet of paper and began to jot down notes, a plan forming in his mind. He would reach out to the families he had met, as well as others who had been affected. He wanted to gather their stories, to compile a document that could serve as both a memorial and a resource for future rangers. Caleb recalled the importance of transparency and communication between the rangers and the community. He wanted to ensure that policies would be put in place to prevent any future misunderstandings or tragic incidents. The work he was undertaking was not just about understanding the past, it was about building a better future. With each note he wrote, he felt a sense of clarity shaping his purpose. He resolved to reach out to local authorities, perhaps even the Ranger Division, to ensure that protocols were established to improve safety and communication during controlled burns. He could not change the past, but he could influence the future. As the evening air grew cooler and the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, he felt a surge of determination. He wanted to reach out to the families he had encountered, Margaret, Jake, and the others. They had shared their painful experiences with him, and now he needed to ensure that their voices were included in the narrative of the tragic day. Caleb's heart beat with urgency as he thought about how he would approach them. He could draft a letter of invitation, asking them to share their stories further and asking if they would be willing to participate in a community forum to discuss fire safety and prevention. The more he considered it, the clearer the vision of the forum became, an opportunity for healing, understanding, and collaboration. As he finalized his notes, Caleb felt the weight of the past lifting, replaced by a sense of hope for a brighter future. A future built on honesty, healing, and the courage to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The The following morning, Caleb awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. He was determined to act swiftly. He spent the morning drafting letters to the families he had spoken to, inviting them to a gathering at the community center. He took care to express the importance of their stories and how they could contribute to a comprehensive discussion on fire safety and community resilience. Once the letters were ready, he headed out to deliver them personally. He felt it was essential to convey the sincerity of his intentions face to face. First, he drove to Margaret's house. The sun was shining down, illuminating the landscape in warm hues. As he drove, he thought about how he would approach her, hoping she would see the value in sharing her experience with others. When he arrived at her home, he noticed the garden she had tended carefully, even after losing so much in the fire. Flowers bloomed vibrantly, a testament to her resilience and determination to rebuild. He walked up to the door and knocked gently. Margaret answered, surprise evident on her face. "Caleb, what a nice surprise," she said, her smile genuine. "Hi, Margaret." "I hope I'm not intruding," he said, holding up the letter. "I wanted to invite you to a gathering I'm organizing at the community center. I think it would be a great opportunity for everyone to share their stories and discuss fire safety and prevention." She studied his face for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "You really think it's a good idea to bring everyone together? It's been so painful for many of us," she said, her voice tinged with caution. "I do. I believe that sharing our stories can help us heal and prevent future tragedies. If we can find a way to come together, we can strengthen our community and ensure that our experiences aren't forgotten," Caleb replied earnestly. Margaret hesitated, but Caleb could see the flicker of hope in her eyes. "You're right, it's worth considering. I'll be there," she finally said, her voice firm. "Thank you, Margaret. It means a lot," Caleb said, relief washing over him. He spent the afternoon visiting Jake and other families, encountering a mix of responses. Some were hesitant, still grappling with their loss and unsure about revisiting the painful memories. Others were more receptive, seeing the potential for change and healing through collective storytelling. By the end of the day, he had gathered a small group of committed individuals who were willing to share their experiences. They agreed to meet at the community center in 1 week to discuss the forum's purpose and set a date for the gathering. As Caleb returned to the ranger station, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The journey ahead would not be easy, and he knew there would be challenges as they faced the past, but he also felt a surge of hope. He was no longer navigating this path alone. He had the community behind him, ready to support one another in their quest for understanding and healing. The night sky sparkled like a blanket of diamonds as he gazed out of the window. Caleb sat at his desk, reflecting on the progress he had made. He realized that these stories were not just about tragedy. They were threads weaving together a tapestry of resilience, strength, and hope. As he settled into bed, he thought of the gathering ahead and the stories that would be shared. He felt honored to be a part of it, to bear witness to the healing process, and to honor the memory of those affected by the fire. Tomorrow would be another step toward uncovering the truth, forging a new legacy that would, hopefully, serve as a guiding light for future generations. With that thought lingering in his mind, Caleb drifted off to sleep, determined to continue his journey of truth and healing for the community, a journey that was only just beginning. Caleb awoke with the rising sun filtering through the trees, casting a warm glow across the ranger station. He stretched, feeling the anticipation of the day ahead coursing through him. Today was the day of the community gathering, a moment he had been planning for, yet it felt surreal that it was finally here. After a quick breakfast of eggs and toast, he reviewed his notes. The folder containing the reports and stories was opened on the table, a collection of truths waiting to be shared. He had spent the past week preparing, reaching out to families, and ensuring that everyone understood the purpose of this gathering. It was more than just a meeting. It was a chance for healing, connection, and understanding. As he drove to the community center, his heart raced with excitement and nerves. The warm light of the morning illuminated the landscape, the trees standing tall as if they were sentinels watching over the town. Memories of the stories shared in the diner and the community center flooded his mind, reminding him why he was doing this. Each story held a piece of the truth, a fragment of the larger narrative that needed to be told. Upon arriving at the community center, Caleb was greeted by Laura, the group leader who had supported him during the planning stages. She stood near the entrance, welcoming attendees with a warm smile. "Good morning, Caleb. I'm glad to see you." "Ready for today?" "As ready as I can be," he replied, taking a deep breath. "I hope everyone shows up." "They will. You've done a great job reaching out," she said encouragingly. "People want to share their stories. They need to be heard." Caleb nodded, grateful for her support. The atmosphere inside the community center was buzzing with anticipation. Tables were set up in a circle, and a small podium stood at the front, with a microphone ready for use. The room was filled with the familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee and pastries, providing a comforting backdrop for the gathering ahead. As the attendees began to arrive, Caleb recognized many familiar faces. There was Margaret, her demeanor more confident than when he last saw her. Jake was there too, along with a few other families who had been affected by the fire. They exchanged brief greetings, and Caleb could sense the shared understanding that lingered among them, a bond forged by shared experiences. Once the room was filled, Laura took the lead. "Thank you all for coming today. This gathering is a safe space for us to share, listen, and heal together. We know that the memories of that tragic day still haunt many of us, but by coming together, we can find strength in our shared experiences." Caleb watched as people nodded in agreement, the collective weight of their histories palpable in the air. He felt a surge of gratitude for the courage of those who had come, ready to share their stories. After Laura's introduction, she turned to Caleb, gesturing for him to step forward. "Caleb has taken the initiative to help us gather our stories. I encourage him to share a few words about why he's here and what this means to him." Caleb approached the podium, feeling the weight of everyone's gaze on him. He took a deep breath, the air buzzing with unspoken emotions. "Thank you, Laura, and thank you everyone for being here today." He paused, trying to assemble his thoughts. "As the new park ranger, I've always wanted to connect with this community, to understand its history and the impact of the land around us. But I quickly learned that the past holds so much more than just tales of nature. It carries the weight of human experiences, joy, pain, love, and loss." He felt the heaviness in the room as he continued. "When I learned about the fire and its consequences, I realized that I had to do more than just listen. I wanted to help honor the stories of those who were affected, to ensure that the truth of that day is not lost in the shadows. It's important to remember not just what happened, but who we are as a community." Caleb's voice began to tremble slightly as he recalled the stories shared with him. "Each of you has a piece of this narrative. Today, I invite you to share your experiences, to connect with one another, and to heal together. I believe that through our stories, we can build a stronger community and ensure that such a tragedy never happens again." Indeed, a quiet hush fell over the room, and Caleb could feel the collective anticipation as he stepped back from the podium. He sensed that they were ready to begin. Laura encouraged the first volunteer to step forward, and Margaret was the one to break the silence. With a steady voice, she began to recount her experience. I was at work when I heard about the fire. I remember the panic I felt as I rushed home, praying that my house was still standing. Her voice shook slightly as she continued. When I arrived, it was like a nightmare. I stood there watching everything I'd worked for go up in flames. It was devastating. As she spoke, Caleb watched the reactions of the others in the room. Some nodded in understanding, while others wiped away tears. He felt the power of her story rippling through the space, touching hearts and igniting shared memories. One by one, others began to speak. Jake spoke about how he had to leave his business behind. I lost my shop, my livelihood. It was a dark time for my family. We struggled to find our footing again. He shared how the anger had simmered beneath the surface and how difficult it was to rebuild trust in the community. Another woman, Sarah, spoke of losing her father in the fire. He was trying to save our home, to keep us safe. It was his mission. I still have nightmares about that day. I wish I could have done something. Her voice broke, and the room fell silent as everyone absorbed the weight of her words. Caleb felt a wave of emotions crashing over him as he listened to their stories. The raw vulnerability in the room was palpable, a shared understanding of loss and resilience. As each person spoke, they built a tapestry of their experiences, each thread woven tighter with the stories shared. As the afternoon wore on, Caleb took notes, documenting the stories being told. He felt a deep responsibility to ensure that each person's voice was captured accurately, that their truths would not be forgotten. Eventually, Laura encouraged a discussion. What can we learn from these experiences? How can we come together to prevent another tragedy like this? The room buzzed with activity as ideas flowed. People spoke about the importance of communication between rangers and the community. They discussed the need for more education on fire safety and the protocols for controlled burns. There was a consensus that the community should have a hand in the decision-making process, ensuring their voices were heard and their concerns addressed. Caleb watched as people began to build connections, exchanging contact information and pledging to work together in the future. It was a powerful reminder that even in the face of tragedy, hope and resilience could thrive. As the gathering drew to a close, Caleb felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. They had shared their pain and their stories, but they had also forged a path toward healing and unity. He stepped back up to the podium, the weight of the moment hanging in the air. Thank you all for being here today, for sharing your stories and your strength, he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Let's commit to keeping this conversation going. Together we can ensure that our experiences inform the future, that we take the lessons learned and create a safer, more connected community. The applause that followed was filled with appreciation and hope. Caleb felt a sense of purpose anchoring him, a realization that he was not just a ranger, but a part of this community's journey. After everyone had left, Laura approached Caleb with a smile. You did great today. I think we really made a difference. Thank you, Laura. I couldn't have done it without your support, he replied, feeling a sense of camaraderie. As he packed up his notes, Caleb reflected on the power of stories, the way they could unite people, heal wounds, and spark change. He realized that this gathering was just the beginning. There would be more meetings, more conversations, and more work to do in the coming days. Caleb stepped outside into the cool evening air, the sun setting behind the trees. He looked up at the vast sky, a canvas painted with hues of orange and purple. The world felt a little brighter, a little hopeful. He knew that the journey would not be easy, but he felt ready to face whatever came next. Today marked the start of a new chapter for his community, one built on understanding, healing, and shared experiences. As he drove home, the road ahead was illuminated by the fading light, and Caleb felt a sense of peace wash over him. He was committed to this path, to uncovering the truth, honoring the past, and ensuring a brighter future for the community he had come to love. The stories shared today would echo for generations to come, woven into the fabric of their shared history, a reminder of resilience and hope in the face of adversity. In the weeks following the Community Fire Safety Day, Caleb felt a renewed sense of purpose resonating within him. The event had drawn an impressive turnout, and the atmosphere was charged with energy and optimism. Families gathered not just to learn about fire safety, but to connect, share stories, and build relationships that would strengthen the community. As he walked through the park one afternoon, the sun casting warm rays across the landscape, Caleb reflected on how far they had come. The town, once shrouded in shadows of a painful past, was beginning to transform. Conversations about fire safety became part of their regular discourse, and he often saw families discussing preparedness strategies in the diner or at the grocery store. This change was palpable, and Caleb felt a sense of pride for the role he had played in fostering these connections. However, he understood that the journey was far from over. The scars from the fire were still fresh for many, and the healing process would take time. Eager to keep the momentum going, he reached out to Margaret and other community leaders to brainstorm new initiatives that would further engage residents in fire safety and community resilience. One afternoon, while discussing potential ideas over coffee, Margaret proposed an idea that struck a chord with Caleb. What if we create a community emergency response team? A group of trained volunteers who can assist during emergencies. It might empower people and give them a sense of agency, she suggested. Caleb's eyes lit up at the thought. That's brilliant! Empowering community members to take action during emergencies could make a significant difference. We could use the workshops as a foundation for training, he replied enthusiastically. They began to plan the framework for the Community Emergency Response Team, CRT, reaching out to local officials and trainers who could assist in developing a curriculum. They envisioned sessions that would not only focus on fire safety, but also encompass first aid, disaster response, and communication strategies. As they moved forward, they held meetings to engage members of the community, explaining the concept of CERT and inviting anyone interested to participate. To their delight, the response was overwhelmingly positive. People were eager to take part, motivated not only by the desire to help, but also by the chance to connect with their neighbors in a meaningful way. Caleb and Margaret organized the first training session at the community center, and as attendees arrived, he felt a surge of excitement. The room buzzed with conversation, a palpable energy that filled the air. He welcomed everyone, then turned the floor over to a trainer from the local fire department who began to explain the basics of emergency response. Throughout the training, Caleb noticed the engagement levels soar. Participants were eager to ask questions, share personal stories, and practice the skills being taught. The room was filled with laughter and camaraderie, and Caleb felt pride swelling in his chest. This was about more than just safety. It was about healing and building a community that was prepared to face challenges together. As the weeks turned into months, the Community Emergency Response Team took shape. Caleb watched as neighbors who had once been strangers became friends and allies. They practiced drills, learned how to use fire extinguishers, and held mock emergency scenarios to prepare for real-life situations. It was a process filled with hard work and dedication, but the sense of accomplishment they all felt was palpable. One day, after a particularly successful training session, Caleb sat down with Margaret and a few other members at the diner. They were reviewing feedback from the participants when a familiar voice interrupted them. "Hey there, Caleb." It was Jake, one of the community members who had been instrumental in sharing his story during the workshops. "I just wanted to say thank you for everything you've done. I never thought I'd feel this connected to my neighbors again." Caleb looked up, surprised and pleased. "Thank you, Jake. It's the community that's really come together. We're all in this together." Jake nodded, his expression serious. "You know, I've been thinking. Since we're getting stronger as a community, how about we organize a Fire Safety Awareness Month? We could have demonstrations, hand out safety kits, and maybe even involve local schools." The idea resonated with Caleb, and he felt a rush of inspiration. "That's a fantastic idea. We could partner with local businesses to sponsor the event and create a larger outreach program to educate more families." The group brainstormed ideas, discussing potential activities and partnerships they could tap into. Excitement filled the air as they imagined the possibilities of how the community could come together once more to raise awareness and promote safety. As the Fire Safety Awareness Month approached, Caleb was both thrilled and nervous. They worked tirelessly to prepare for the events, securing vendors, organizing demonstrations, and promoting the initiative through flyers and social media. On the day of the kickoff event, the community center buzzed with energy as families arrived, eager to learn and participate. Caleb stood at the entrance, welcoming everyone with a warm smile. "Thank you for being here today. We've organized a variety of demonstrations and activities for you to enjoy. Let's make fire safety a priority together." The excitement in the room was contagious. Children darted between activities, while adults gathered around tables to listen to safety presentations and demonstrations. Caleb moved through the crowd, listening to laughter and conversations that filled the space. He felt a sense of fulfillment. This was what community looked like. As the day wound down, he gathered everyone for a closing speech. "I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out today. Your commitment to fire safety and community resilience is inspiring. Let's continue to work together, share our stories, and ensure that our community remains a safe place for all." As the crowd erupted in applause, Caleb felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. They were not defined by their past. Instead, they were empowered by their collective strength. The scars of the fire would always exist, but they had transformed pain into purpose. In the months that followed, the community emergency response team flourished. Regular training sessions and community events became part of their routine, fostering a deeper connection among residents. Caleb watched as his neighbors became not just friends, but a family, united by their shared commitment to safety and resilience. As he reflected on the journey they had taken together, he knew that the future was bright. They had faced the darkness of their past and emerged stronger, ready to protect and support one another through whatever challenges lay ahead. Caleb felt a profound sense of belonging, knowing he was part of a community that would rise together, always prepared to face the future with courage and hope. As the seasons changed, the town of Maplewood continued to thrive, filled with a renewed sense of purpose and unity. Caleb felt an exhilarating sense of accomplishment each time he walked through the community center, now a vibrant hub for learning and connection. The Fire Safety Awareness Month had sparked a transformation, reinforcing the bonds among residents and creating an environment where communication flowed freely. One crisp autumn evening, Caleb stood on the porch of the ranger station, gazing out at the changing leaves. The vibrant reds, oranges, and yellows painted a picturesque scene, but it wasn't just the beauty of nature that filled him with warmth. It was the knowledge that the community had come together to create something meaningful. As the ranger, he had sought to connect people to the land, but in doing so, he had connected them to each other. Caleb's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of his phone buzzing in his pocket. Pulling it out, he saw a message from Margaret. "Hey Caleb, we're having a potluck at the community center next Saturday. Would love for you to join us." He smiled at the invitation. "Sounds great. I'll bring my famous chili," he texted back, excitement bubbling inside him. The potluck was more than just a meal. It was a celebration of community, a chance to share food, laughter, and stories. The week passed quickly, and on the day of the potluck, the community center was buzzing with activity. Tables were adorned with colorful tablecloths and filled with an array of dishes, each one representing the diverse backgrounds of the attendees. Caleb arrived with his chili, the aroma wafting through the air as he set it down on the buffet table. "Looks delicious," Margaret exclaimed, giving him a warm smile. "I can't wait to try it." As the potluck began, Caleb moved through the crowd, greeting neighbors and enjoying the delicious spread of food. Laughter filled the air as families shared their favorite recipes, sharing stories about the dishes and the memories attached to them. "Caleb, you have to try this cornbread," Jake called out, holding a plate piled high with food. "It's made from my grandma's recipe." Caleb chuckled and grabbed a piece, savoring the familiar flavors. "This is amazing, Jake. You'll have to share the recipe with me." As the evening progressed, Caleb felt a profound sense of belonging. The scars from the past were still present, but they were now accompanied by the strength of connection and community. People were talking, connecting, and laughing together, a stark contrast to the tension that had filled the town not so long ago. After dinner, Margaret stood to address the group. "Thank you all for coming tonight. It's heartwarming to see everyone here, sharing not just food but also our stories and experiences. We've come so far together, and I'm so proud of what we've built as a community." The crowd murmured in agreement, and Caleb felt a swell of pride. This was what they had worked towards, a united community, ready to support one another. As the evening wore on, the laughter transformed into storytelling. People began to share their favorite memories of the town, recounting stories of resilience, laughter, and hope. Caleb listened intently, captivated by the rich tapestry of experiences that formed the foundation of their community. Jake stood up, glass in hand. "I want to propose a toast to the people of Maplewood. May we continue to rise together, no matter what challenges come our way." Everyone raised their glasses, smiles stretching across their faces. "To Maplewood," they echoed, the warmth of unity enveloping the room. As the evening came to a close, Caleb felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. The potluck was a reminder of the strength that lay in community, of the power found in shared experiences. The bonds they had forged would continue to grow, creating a safety net for everyone involved. Later that night, as he returned to the ranger station, Caleb took a moment to reflect on the changes that had taken place in Maplewood. The once quiet town was now alive with laughter and connection. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for having the opportunity to be part of this transformation. But even as he basked in the glow of the evening, Caleb knew that their work wasn't done. He felt a renewed commitment to continue fostering these connections, to ensure that fire safety and preparedness remained at the forefront of their minds. The future of Maplewood depended on their willingness to work together, to share their stories, and to learn from one another. As he settled into bed that night, he felt a sense of hope for what lay ahead. The journey had been filled with challenges, but the strength of their community had proven resilient. Caleb understood that while the scars from the past would always be there, they could be transformed into something beautiful, a legacy built on unity, strength, and a shared commitment to protecting one another. In the days and months to come, Caleb would continue to be a part of this journey, supporting the community in its ongoing growth and resilience. He was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that together they could overcome anything. Maplewood was not just a town, it was a family, and they would rise together, stronger than ever. As the first snowflakes of winter began to fall, covering Maplewood in a soft white blanket, Caleb felt a sense of peace settle over the community. The holidays were approaching, and the spirit of togetherness was palpable. The town had transformed not only in its landscape, but in its heart. Through shared experiences and open dialogue, the bonds among residents had deepened, creating a network of support that would endure. Caleb stood outside the ranger station one chilly afternoon, sipping hot cocoa as he watched children gleefully throw snowballs and build snowmen in the park. The laughter of families echoed around him, a joyful reminder of how far they had come. The community had embraced the spirit of the season, decorating the town square with lights and ornaments, turning it into a festive gathering place. Margaret approached, bundled up in a warm coat and a colorful scarf. "Hey, Caleb, are you ready for the tree lighting ceremony tonight?" she asked with a bright smile. "Of course, I've been looking forward to it," he replied, his heart warmed by the anticipation. "It's going to be a great way to celebrate the season and everything we've accomplished together." As the sun set, casting a golden hue over the snow-covered landscape, townspeople gathered in the square. The tree stood tall, adorned with twinkling lights and handmade ornaments crafted by various families. It was a symbol of their resilience and unity, reflecting the journey they had taken together. Caleb took a moment to absorb the scene, the laughter of children, families huddled close together, and the warmth of community spirit enveloping him. He felt grateful for the role he had played in fostering these connections, but he also recognized that the journey was a collective effort. The mayor stepped up to the podium, her voice ringing out across the square. "Welcome, everyone. This year, as we gather to light our holiday tree, let us remember the strength we've shown as a community. Together, we've faced challenges, shared stories, and built a brighter future. Let's carry this spirit of togetherness into the new year." A cheer erupted from the crowd, and Caleb felt the energy swell around him. He glanced at Margaret, who was beaming with pride, and he knew that the efforts they had put into fortifying the community had not gone unnoticed. As the countdown began, the excitement in the air was palpable. 3, 2, 1, the crowd shouted, and the tree burst into a dazzling display of lights. Gasps of awe filled the air as families marveled at the beauty of the illuminated tree, a symbol of hope and resilience. Caleb felt a surge of emotion as he looked around at the smiling faces illuminated by the warm glow of the lights. He realized that the true spirit of the season was not just in the decorations or the festivities, but in the connections they had forged and the collective strength that had emerged from adversity. "Let's celebrate this season with love, laughter, and unity," Margaret exclaimed, raising her cup of cocoa high. The crowd echoed her sentiments, cheers erupting as they gathered around the tree, sharing stories, songs, and laughter well into the night. As the festivities continued, Caleb knew that this was only the beginning. Maplewood had embraced its past while looking confidently toward the future. The community was stronger than ever, bound together by compassion, understanding, and a commitment to support one another. With a heart full of hope, Caleb stood among his neighbors, reveling in the warmth of the season and the promise of what lay ahead. Together, they would continue to rise, united in purpose and spirit, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring.